Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Rochelle. I read a variety of books and I also have a disability. And today what we're going to go and talk about are my all-time favorite books. This is going to be around 8 books that I have rated 5 stars. So if you're watching this and it's currently the Romathon run by Covers by Cassidy, this is one of the prompts to go and read a 5-star book by a host. So if this is something that you're looking for, I hope that this video will go and help. And if you're watching this outside of Ramathon, I hope that this video is able to show you some new books that maybe you'd like to go and pick up, especially if you've been watching my channel for a while and find that your reading taste seems to match up with mine. So with that being said, let's get started looking at all of my all-time favorite books, and Nugget is here to also go and say that she approves of these books as well. Starting off with dystopian books. Dystopian books are some of my all-time favorite reads. They are so much fun and honestly can sometimes be some of my comfort reads. I don't know why, but whenever I read something that is apocalyptic, dystopian, or has zombies, I eat them up. They are my favorite places to go and escape to, which doesn't make sense, especially when we seem to have some horrors going on in the real world. Why would I want to escape into those other type of horrors? I don't know. I'm strange, what can I say? But the first book that we're going to talk about is The Gracier by Kim Liggett. So if you go on my Goodreads or my story graph, I did not rate this one originally 5 stars. However, this is a book that I constantly go and talk about and refer back to. And honestly, I feel like over time, we are allowed to go and change the ratings of our book. And when I do rate my books 5 stars, one of my reasons for doing so is because it's a book that I constantly think about, and it has been one that sits with me for a very long time. And so that's why this one I'm adding on my 5-star list. This was such a good book. This one kind of feels like a mixture of The Handmaid's Tale in a way, because with this book we are following girls that once they turn 16, they are in what is called the Gracier, and this means that they are taken away to go and rid themselves of their magic in this place that's away from town. It is very secluded, and no one really knows what happens in the Gracier unless you're a woman that has gone through it. Because these girls, once they return, they are battered, they are scarred, they are dealing with horrors that no other people know of, because no one is allowed to talk about what happens during the Gracier. And once these girls return, they get married, and they basically have this claim on them by men in this town saying like, that is going to be who my wife is. And once they go and return back from the Gracier, they get married. So you're probably wondering, like, why is there this thing called the Gracier? Like, what does that mean? Well, girls are said to have this aphrodisiac in their skin that basically leads men to cheat on their wives and do very disrespectful things. And that is why these girls get sent away. They have to rid themselves of this piece of them that causes people to basically break the laws. This was such a good book and extremely difficult. It also had pieces that truthfully could happen in our society, especially with how much hate there seems to be against women. This is constantly a piece that we deal with, and this book just brought to light a lot of those horrors. I loved this book so much. It was so unique and well written, and just had a lot of that female rage, which honestly I just really adore in books. So this is why I'm moving this one to a 5-star read. It was so good, and I highly recommend this book. Then another book I have here is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I read this one, I believe, back in middle school, and I was obsessed with the series. I think this was probably what created my love of dystopian books. It was like this one and Divergent. Those 2 books I absolutely loved and adored. I watched all of the movies. I think some of my friends and we went to go and see them together. And then recently last year, I did go and pick up this book again, and I read it, and it still was a 5-star. It still held up, and I'm very excited to go and continue with the rest of the series with my reread, and then go and read the prequel books because I wanted to reacquaint myself with the world before I read the prequels. And for anyone that hasn't heard of The Hunger Games, hasn't read it before, this is a book where these children are basically picked. There's 12 different districts, and one boy and one girl from each district will basically go and compete in the Hunger Games. And it's kind of like this fight to the death, and whoever wins, that district that they're from, gets food and all these riches until the next Hunger Games goes and happens again. And then there's these people in the capital that go and dress ridiculous in all this different fashion and are obscenely rich, and they'll go and watch these children go and fight to the death. It is such an interesting book, and it's incredibly difficult and such a good read, and honestly, this is something that I would highly recommend. I am also kind of doing a vlog on this, but it will be something that takes some time to come out. But if that's something you're interested in, highly recommend subscribing. But like I said, The Hunger Games, 5-star read, something I would recommend anyone to pick up. I think no matter your age, this is a book that is still absolutely amazing. Because like I said, I did read this when I was in middle school, and I am 30 now, and I still absolutely adored this book. Next, I'm going to talk about Voices in the Snow by Darcy Coates. I didn't rate this one 5 stars, but I did rate the third book, Whispers in the Mist, 5 stars. But we're going to talk about this one just so I don't go into spoiler territory for the other book. I do have all the books in the series. There is a total of 4, and honestly, I adore this series so much. I wish that I could read it again for the first time because it was so good. If you like The Walking Dead, The Day After Tomorrow, Mist, any of those, I would highly recommend going and picking up this book. We are dealing with a main character who is trying to go and drive to her sister's house because there is this huge winter storm that is coming, and all surrounding areas that have been affected by the storm suddenly black out. They don't have electricity. No one has any way of contacting anyone in those areas. So our main character is trying to get to her sister as quick as possible so that they can go in the fallout shelter and survive together and be together. And while this is happening, unfortunately, our character gets caught in the storm and gets into a horrendous crash. And when she wakes up, she is in this very old-timey looking house that is decorated very strangely, like it's from a whole different century. And over by the fireplace, she sees the silhouette of a man. And the thing is, she doesn't know if this man is someone that kidnapped her or if he's a friend. She doesn't know what's going on. All that she knows is that she's injured, and she's trying to reconnect the dots of what happened when she was driving a car and talking to her sister to now when she's waking up in this foreign territory. This was so good, and while the story is progressing, you're seeing these creatures kind of lurking in the shadows, and you don't know if it's a figment of her imagination or if these creatures are actually real, if they're caused by this situation that is going on. And honestly, that's all the information I'm going to give you. I don't want to go too in depth, but this is a book that I will scream and shout from the rooftops, proclaiming my love for it, just to get someone to read it so I can talk about the series with them. I'm hoping in a few more years I can do a reread because I love this series so much. So like I said, the third book is actually my 5-star read, but if I can get you to read the rest of the series, I'm not upset about it. Then my last book kind of in this horror area is going to be On Sunday She Picked Flowers by Scholfield. I did talk about this one in my February reading wrap-up as well as my reading vlog, and this was honestly an amazing book. I got this one as an ARC from Saga Press, and it was just absolutely amazing. There was familial trauma in there. There was also like self-discovery and learning what your sexuality is as well as accepting it. There was a main character who is more of a middle age. There were just a lot of really great additions and pieces to this book that I absolutely adored. With this book, we start out with our main character who is still living with her mom. I believe at this time she is in her 40s, and she has a very strained and difficult relationship with her mother. There is a very strong cultural piece in there, and her mom is very, very abusive to her. And the daughter wants nothing more than to escape and be able to live her own life finally. So she's been packing away little pieces that she can hopefully use when the time is right so she can escape and be able to fend for herself. But one thing leads to another, and there's an altercation with her mom. And so she runs away, and while running away, she comes to this town that is predominantly white, and no one is really treating her well. They're kind of eyeing her suspiciously, but one person points her to this abandoned house and says, there are ghosts here, but no one comes near this house. This could be the place that you could stay. So since our main character has no other opportunities, she decides to go and live there. And once she gets there, she kind of learns that this house is kind of sentient. It has these feelings, and if it's upset by certain things, it's like a window will crack or break, or the plumbing will stop working. And so she has to learn to kind of coexist with this house, and there's haints there, or spirits. So she's trying to go and appease them, and they do learn to go and coexist. But while this is going on, she also feels like there's this creature that is stalking her. She doesn't know what kind of animal it is, but she always feels its eyes watching her. While trying to survive, one thing leads to another, and a sapphic relationship is introduced. There were a lot of really cool pieces with this book, and I did love how beautifully written it was. I will say as well, though, to definitely go and check your trigger warnings with this book, because if you're someone like me that is biracial and kind of understands a lot of different familial trauma, this might be a difficult book to read, but at the same time, I think this was really well written and also very empowering in some aspects. There was a lot of female rage in this book, and also I really loved the fact that we did get to see the point of view from some of the main characters' family members and seeing what they experienced and their thought processes with what was going on. It was such a good book, and honestly was my first 5-star read for 2026. So if that's any indicator for why I just rave about this book, I hope that is. Now let's talk about fantasy books. I'm not really a huge fantasy reader. It's something I enjoy, but I don't always read a lot of it just because I'm really bad about reading sequels in a series. And with fantasy books, given the world building and pieces like that, it can sometimes make it really difficult for me to remember what happened and have to go and re-pick up the first book so that I can remember everything that's going on. But I do have a few different ones that I'd like to talk about. One of them is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Jaysea Lynn. This was one that I didn't really know about because I'm not too much on TikTok, and that's where this author ended up going and talking about her book quite a bit. But I got an audiobook for this one through Saga Press, and honestly, I would highly recommend listening to that audiobook because the narrators were absolutely amazing. We got 2 different narrators, so we got a female and a male that were going and voicing the different characters in this book, and they did it so well. It is also a pretty chunky read too, which is another reason why I'd recommend it, but I loved that book so much that I had to go and buy myself a physical copy, if that is any indicator for how much I love this one. So with this book, our main character dies, and that's not really a spoiler by any means because it is something that I believe the synopsis says very quickly. It also happens in the very first chapter. But our main character is brought to basically the afterlife, and she's in heaven, and she kind of gets shown around and given the whole tour, and heaven's great and all, but she finds herself drawn more and more to hell. And with hell, it kind of has the different levels, so depending on how big your sin is depends on where you go. But to go and get placed in one of those levels, you have to wait in this really long line for them to tell you where you go. And our main character needs something to do. She's kind of bored. Everything's great and all, but she needs a purpose. And so she decides to go and create a help desk, or in this case, a help desk. And she has this little desk, and she interacts with some of these sinners, and some of them she goes and calms down, especially the Karens or the Brads and Chads who are like, we don't belong here, we didn't do anything wrong. And so yeah, that's kind of what she does in her day-to-day, and she makes friends with a lot of the demons that work there in hell. And one thing leads to another, and they go and invite her into their friend group to go out for drinks and playing online games. I can't remember what the online game is, but it basically shows that our main character is a huge nerd, which was another piece that made me absolutely adore her. And while playing this game with a bunch of other people, she suddenly hears the voice of this very attractive man, and they have this banter that I just absolutely adored, where basically they were calling each other like their gamer wife or gamer husband type of thing. And they do finally get to meet in person, and that friendship just continues to grow. I personally love banter in romance books. It is one of my favorite pieces, especially since I'm not a huge romance reader. So anytime there's banter, I eat it up, I giggle, I kick my feet. I thought this book was absolutely amazing. It was also one that made me sob because there was another character that later gets introduced, and I just adored them so much. They need to be protected at all costs. So I loved this book, and I don't even know if I'm giving a great description for it. So as I do with my wrap-ups, and as you've probably been seeing during this video, I do have like a little synopsis on the side. So if what I'm saying is not selling it for you, I hope that that description does. Then the next book that I'm going to talk about for fantasy books is actually going to be another second book, which is Isle of Ember. This is a part of the Enchanted Isles series. This is book 2 by Alycia E. Anderson. But the book that I'm going to talk about instead is going to be the first one, which is the Enchanted Isles, because I don't want to give you any spoilers for this one. So the best way that I could go and describe the series is The Mummy meets Pirates of the Caribbean meets Atlantis. So I'm actually going to read a little bit of the back of the book because I'm struggling to go and piece together and describe what this book is about. So this says, Vivian Banner has spent her life surrounded by maps of distant lands she planned never to see, bound to the Library of Metis by family legacy. When her parents go missing at sea, Vivian is thrust on a perilous mission to venture to the first of the legendary Enchanted Isles of Osumiri and retrieve one of the artifacts said to hold the power to save her homeland and solve the mystery of her parents' disappearance. So with this book, like it goes and describes, our main character is a librarian and her parents have gone missing. She tries to go and ask the king for help, but he basically turns it down, and he's like, the only way you can find your parents is if you go on this journey to find these artifacts, because they're going in the path that will go to where your parents are. But if you can't find them, you lose your entire home and your job and everything like that. So she goes there, and she has her friend who is kind of like this botanist. You're not quite sure if they have if they're going to have a friends to lovers relationship, what exactly is there, because it seems like the friend has a crush on her. And then once they get on the ship, you also learn that one of the people on the ship was her ex-fiance. So there's another love interest. And then I think another one gets added too that also works on the ship. So there's like this love square, which adds another piece to the story. But I really loved it because of the mummy and Pirates of the Caribbean aspects to this book. It was so much fun, and it seems like there's at least going to be 7 books, one for each island, which leads up to Isle of Ember, which is the second book, and honestly was my favorite. This one actually got me to go and cry, and I do have an arc for the third book. I run to go and sign up every time I learn that this author has her ARC applications open, because I'm obsessed with this series. It is so much fun and so good, so adventurous, and it's just like a little movie in my head that I absolutely enjoy. So as I said in the beginning, if you like Atlantis, The Mummy, Pirates of the Caribbean, any of those movies, I'd highly recommend checking out the series, and that is why Isle of Ember is rated 5 stars for me. This one was really close. I think I rated it 4.5 stars. Alright, and then the last books that I'm going to talk about are romance books. Now, I'm not a huge romance reader at all, but I do every now and then find romance books that I really enjoy. And one of them is Maya's Laws of Love by Alina Khawaja. This was one that I got as an ARC, and I loved this book so much that I had to go and get a physical copy of it. So this one kind of reminded me of Leap Year, but make it someone that is a person of color. So with this one, our main character, Maya, is someone that is a bride-to-be that believes she is cursed in love. She hasn't been able to go and find anyone to potentially get married with. She hasn't had luck in romance, so she kind of winds up in this arranged marriage by her parents with someone that she knew through college, and she's like, he was nice enough, sure, I guess let's go and get married. And they're going to be getting married in their home country. So she is planning on going and traveling there. I believe she's traveling alone because she kind of wanted to have that last bit of independence. But things kind of go horribly wrong, and she finds herself with a very, very grumpy travel companion. Because the trip goes horribly wrong, they are stuck together, and they're both stuck together trying to go and get to the same place. And it's just like one awful event leads after another, and it's one of those grumpy meets sunshine books that I absolutely adored. I thought this was such a cute book, and I loved it. It was a very short and quick read, and just because it has like the different laws on the back of the book, I want to read them to you just in case if that piques your interest a little bit more. Maya's law number 1, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Law number 4, when you think you're lucky, think again. Law number 6, trips are never smooth sailing. Law 18, if you're overtired, you'll always spill your guts. This was really cute. It had me laughing and kicking my feet. I remember having such a blast with this book, and it was why I rated it 5 stars. I just thought it was such a great read. All right, then last 5-star read that I will talk about is Out on a Limb. And as you can see, it is a book that I absolutely adore. I have so many different editions of it. I have the traditionally published edition, the indie version. I got it a few months before it went traditionally published. And then I think this was like a special edition that I got from Pango. I was so happy to get this one because I didn't know about this one at the time it released because I hadn't read the series yet. And then this, I think it's Italian, this version, and it has these gorgeous sprayed edges. It also has this on the cover of Win and Beau. And then the inside cover has Win and Beau dancing in the living room. But yeah, Out on a Limb is one of my all-time favorite books. So this is a book by Hannah Bonam-Young. But for those of you that aren't aware, this is a book that is written in an own voice. Hannah Bonam-Young does have a limb difference, and when I was first getting into my limb difference advocacy, I was really looking for books that might have had limb difference representation in it. When I was growing up, this was not something that was really present, which really sucked, especially as someone that didn't really know anyone outside of my dad that had the same disability as me. So this was a book that got brought up right away, and to be honest, like when I saw the cover, it really didn't draw me in, but I saw the limb difference of the male main character, and I was intrigued, and I'm so glad that I ended up going and picking it up, because for multiple reasons, this book just has such a huge importance to me. Not only did it give me the representation that I was always dying to see in books, but it helped me feel seen. I've never felt so seen by a character that had the same experiences that I've had with my own limb difference journey. And also, this book was probably what started me with my booktube and getting interested in talking about books on the internet. I have such a high place in my heart for this book and this author. It's just a book that I absolutely adore. So let me stop babbling about that. So with this book, we have 2 main characters who both have limb differences. Our character, Win, she was born with hers, whereas Beau, he experienced limb loss. He lost his leg and now is an amputee. So when they first meet each other, they meet each other at a Halloween party, and both of them are actually dressed up as pirates. And they do have some fun banter where they're like, well, one of us is going to change. One of us needs to change our outfit. And while going and bantering about that, they actually realize that both of them have limb differences. And one thing leads to another, and they have this really hot one-night stand. It happens, I believe, in the first chapter. And then what happens but an unexpected pregnancy. Now, this is a piece that I wasn't really sure if I would enjoy. It wasn't really something that ever had my interest, but it really, really worked for this story, and we're dealing with a lot of different pieces, such as someone that has a limb difference that could get passed genetically, and worrying about how that child's going to turn out, but also how are they going to be as a mother. And these are some thoughts that I've also thought about because I am someone that does eventually want to have children, and I've faced a lot of ableism from a previous partner about not wanting a child to have my genetics and making me feel less than. But then on the opposite end, going and meeting my now fiance, who thinks I'm perfect just the way I am, and if we were to have a child, would be happy having a child that has that limb difference or a different limb difference because they know that I've been perfectly functional with the way I am, and I can go and help a child that also is dealing with something like that. And I'm trying not to get too into it because I'm already feeling myself get emotional, and getting emotional and also being sick is not a great mixture. But this book just had a lot of really impactful pieces that I absolutely loved. It was so well written, and honestly, like, Beau, the male main character, I had such a huge crush on him. He was like book boyfriend goals. So good. This is an amazing book, and I know I've influenced a few different people that have watched my channel to go and read this book, and they've absolutely adored it as well. So if anything, if I convince you to read this book just from watching this video, I win. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. This is another book that I rated 5 stars. Just love it, and I will collect all the different versions of this book that I'm able to get my hands on because it means so much to me, especially being the first book that I was actually able to 100% relate to a character because they had the same disability as me. And that is why representation is so important in books. And even just social media, like getting to see someone or read about someone and saying like, hey, they're just like me. Nothing beats those feelings. It's the best thing ever. Hello, incoming secret. I might have been informed that Team Clerics have been attacked the most by Team Paladins. Use that information how you see fit. All right. So yeah, those were my 8 books that I wanted to talk about that I rated 5 stars. I love all of these books so much. If I could go and read them again for the first time, I would jump to do so in a heartbeat. I'll probably be reading these books again within the next few years, so don't be surprised if you see them on my channel. But I'm curious, were there a few books that maybe caught your attention or caught your interest? Are there some that you'd like to pick up, or have you read any of these books and you really liked them? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you got to this point of the video and you don't know what to comment, I'd say like leave some sort of emote that represents a different type of disability. I would love to see that disability rep in the comments if you're so inclined. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some new books to read, and thank you again so much for watching this. If you did like this video and liked the vibes I had here, maybe consider going and subscribing, possibly leaving a like, or even going and hyping up this video. That helps support my channel so much and brings it to other people on the internet that might not have been to this tiny corner of the internet. But as always, I just want to wrap up my video with this reminder to always remember that you're worthy and capable of amazing things. Bye, friends. We have a special guest. We have a special guest, which is Phineas the Floof. Huh, Finn? If you've been hearing a cat yelling in the background, that is this guy. This is also the elusive Finn. I know some people think I only have 2 cats. I have 3, but this guy doesn't like to be on camera much. Do ya? The camera loves you, buddy. He's not happy. Okay, I'll let him go.